Hello everyone. In this lesson we're going to use Next.js for the first time. At this point in the course, you are a React power user, so now is the perfect time to start leveraging your React skills in the incredibly powerful framework that is called Next.js. I'm so excited for you. I think your React skills combined with Next, it's going to make you feel like a superhero. Let's dig into the action. Cool. So from the official Next.js website, we're just going to dig through the documentation, and I want to show you how to create a new project, create a few pages, link back and forth between the few pages, how to add client-side interactivity, so on and so forth. But most importantly, I just want to answer the question for you, what is the point of Next, or what is it doing for people that's so useful? Why is there so much hype surrounding it, and how do we get started? So, without further ado, on my desktop, I have this brand new, completely empty folder, right? It's completely empty, and I just have that empty folder opened up in VS Code. So I'm just going to walk through this with you in a brand new folder. In your command line, let's just say npm init-y. That's going to spin up a new package.json file. Cool. And then from the official documentation, I want to show you what I usually do, so that way you don't have to rewatch this video. I can show you the steps of what I would do. If you go to installation, let me zoom in a little bit here. And then I don't like the automatic installation. I don't like things to be done automatically for me. I always like the manual installation, so I really understand what's going on. But essentially, in our new project, we just need to install a few things from npm. So you could copy and paste that if you wanted to. Paste it in. We're just installing the latest versions of Next, React, and React DOM. Pretty standard stuff, right? So go ahead and press enter, get those installed. And then the next step is to just add a few scripts to our package.json file. So you could select this entire block, but usually I just like to select from the quote of scripts down to this closing curly bracket, just copy that, and then go into your package.json file, and then just replace your existing scripts area like this, and then be sure to have a comma there. Give it a save, cool. Now, before we run npm run dev and test it out and see it in action, we need to create a few files. Let's create sort of like a home page. So in the root of your folder structure, let's create a new folder, and it needs to have this exact name. So I am not making this up. This cannot be unicorn or pizza. It absolutely needs to be just app, A-P-P, lowercase. Cool. Now in that folder, let's create a new file, and it needs to be named layout.jsx. Now, what's going to go inside that file? If we go back to the documentation, scroll down, I'm going to change this from TypeScript to JavaScript. It's my own personal preference. I like JavaScript, but you can see they give you a little bit of boilerplate code for your layout.javascript file, so just copy that into your clipboard, paste it in. Cool. We'll see the point of this file in just a moment. Essentially, your layout file can have common things, like your website's header and your website's footer, and then only the content on the page that's changing, right? Like the main middle part of the screen, that's what would actually change. So like your header would go before this children, and then your footer could go after that, so on and so forth. But for now, we can circle back to that in 30 seconds. For now, let's save this file and then create a new file inside of the app folder and name it page.jsx. So in this case, page is our home page, whereas layout is sort of the skeleton that would be shared across all, or maybe not all, but like most of our pages. But this is our specific home page file. And then again, just a little bit of boilerplate code. So we can actually type this out ourselves just for the fun of it, right? You're going to export default function and then name it like an uppercase name, like a React component. So parentheses, curly brackets, and then just return a bit of JSX. So you could have like a div or a React fragment, say my homepage. This is great. Go ahead and save that, and now we're ready in the command line to say npm run dev. Now, if you open up your browser and visit localhost :3000, awesome. Now, this may not seem like much. You might be thinking right now, Brad, what is the point of this? How is Next.js making our life easier? Well, for one, we didn't have to set up any Webpack or Vite configuration. We didn't have to load any JavaScript files. We're not worrying about transpiling our JSX. And actually on that topic, this content, this HTML, this isn't even client-side rendered JavaScript. Yes, that's correct. Yes, we're using React, and yes, we're using JSX, but this content that we're seeing here, this is not client-side JavaScript. This is old-fashioned 1990s server-sent-over HTML. Don't believe me? Right-click and click View Page Source, And if we search for like the heading level 1 tag, right? So there's the opening body, there's our div, there's our h1. So this is not getting rendered into like, like a React root, like a hollowed out div with an ID of app or something like that. This is just old fashioned traditional server sent over HTML, which as we know is excellent for SEO, for maximum accessibility, for speed, and for a lot of reasons, right? This is great. However, we're getting the awesome developer experience of React and JSX and so on and so forth. Now, don't worry, you might be thinking, but if this is just HTML, how do we add interactivity like on-click event handlers and client-side state? Don't worry, that still exists. We'll get to that in a few minutes, but for now, just know that Next is already handling transpiling, configuration, server-side rendering. I mean, it's already out of the box doing all of that for us. Cool. Now, that's enough theory for now. Let's keep our momentum rolling. So let's get a real world task going. Let's work on adding navigation links down in our footer area. And let's have a page of like about us. And then let's have another page called like contact us. Hey, super quick interruption here. This video is not sponsored. However, if you want to support this channel and tutorials like this, I'll let you know that the lesson you're watching right now is actually part of my full premium 17-hour course on React. In the description for this video, you'll find a link to my website. It's learnwebcode.com, but essentially I have all of my courses listed here. And if we click on React, you can see this course has already received, 1,800 5-star reviews. It's a 17 or 16-hour course. And if you're looking to level up your React skills, which is very useful in the world of Next, I think this course can be of tremendous help to you on your journey. You can click on Buy Now here, and that's just going to take you to this bundle page. So when you buy the React course, you're also getting access in this bundle to my newest bootcamp course, which teaches, Figma to CSS and HTML, JavaScript. You're also getting my Laravel course, you're getting my MySQL course, and then finally you're getting React for the rest of us. Also, you're getting access to the private exclusive Discord chat server, which is only for premium students who have bought this bundle. And then finally, if you want to learn more about the React course, you can click right here, React for the rest of us. There's a promo video which will show you the course project that we learn how to build in just pure React. It's a full single-page application for like a social media network. Anyways, that's enough for this interruption. Let's get back to the task at hand in this Next.js tutorial. And then let's link between our homepage, about, and contact. So back in our layout.jsx file, right, the file that will be used for almost all of our pages, sort of the skeleton. So this, when you're on the home page, would be the homepage content. If you go to the about page, this would be the about page content. So, for example, you could have like a global header above this area, like right here. You could say like, header with a class of site header, and have like a heading level 3 that says our header. And then below this children area, but before the ending body, you could have like a footer with a class of site. I mean, I'm just making this up. This HTML could be anything, but like our footer. Okay, and then imagine in the footer you wanted like a nav with an unordered list with a few links, right? So outside the world of Next.js, you would say like a with an href. But let me show you what you can do in the world of Next, because what we want to have happen. When you click on a link, we don't want traditional 1990s, you click an A element and it performs a complete hard page reload and re-render of a completely new HTTP resource. We don't want that. If JavaScript was disabled, we want that to happen, but then we want to use progressive enhancement. We want to use client-side JavaScript so that when you click on a link, React and JavaScript take over and handle all subsequent page loads, with client-side routing and rendering and, all the benefits of modern JavaScript. So instead of an A element, we're going to use a link component. Now, this will not be available by default, but to fix that, we just go up to the very top of this file, and we're just going to say import link from quotes next/link. That's it. Now we can actually use this component. So in between the link sandwich, you can say like, this will be the home page. And then you give the opening tag, just like the A tag, an href, and just the root of your domain for the home. And then let's duplicate that a couple times. And the second one can be like about us. This one can be contact us, and the href for that would be like /about. And this one could be /contact. Cool. Now, if we save that, cool, but Obviously, it's not going to work if you click on one because we haven't set up a page, for the /about URL. So let's click back and let's go create a page for the about page. So here's what you do. In the app folder, you create a new subfolder with whatever URL structure you want. So like we want /about, so it's not /, it's just about. And then in that folder, you create a file named page.jsx. In this brand new file, you would export default, obviously you'd copy and paste, but a bit of practice, right? A page component or any component, and then you just return a bit of JSX. So like you could have like a React fragment or a div or whatever you want, but let's just have like a div and then like a heading level 2 that says about us, and then have a paragraph with some lorem ipsum, and maybe say like, this is the about page. So now if you click the about link in the footer, awesome, it takes us there, and you can click back to the home page. Really quick, we can set up a contact us page just because practice makes perfect. So a new folder in the app folder named, actually I want to show you a trick here. So instead of, and this is just a VS Code trick, this has nothing to do with Next.js. If you right click on app and click new file, I can say contact/page.jsx, and this will automatically create contact as a folder and then put page.jsx inside of it. Beautiful. And then you can just copy and paste your about page and say like contact us, say like welcome to the contact page. Cool. So now we can navigate between these 3 pages. And what's really cool is this is client. So the initial, like if I refresh, let me show you what's going on here. If I refresh and click view page source, nothing with client-side JavaScript has happened yet, right? So like, here you can see the header, the div, h2, contact us, welcome to the contact page. And now if I click about us, client-side JavaScript takes us there. We're getting the best of both worlds. We're getting our cake and we're eating it too. Initial page load is old server-rendered traditional HTML, and then any subsequent navigations is modern, client-side rendered and routing. I mean, this is awesome. This is what we've always wanted, right? So it's not like we need to write PHP or Ruby on the server side and JSX on the client side. We get to write JSX in both environments. I mean, this is just ideal. It's client side and it's server side. It's the best of both worlds. This is why all the hype for Next.js exists. This used to be kind of tricky to set up, right? With the transpiling and the server rendering. And I mean, Next just makes this so easy. At this point, I want to change gears a little bit, and let's talk about how to actually have things be interactive, right? Originally, the whole point of React was that it was a super interactive environment. So if we have traditional server-rendered HTML, you might be wondering, like, how do we have an interactive component down here? Like, let's have the traditional boilerplate React component down here. It's a button, and it keeps track of how many times you've clicked it, right? So it'll say, like, you've clicked this button 3 times, or 5 times, or 20 times. So let's build that out, right? Let me show you what I would do. Let's go into our layout file and like down in our footer, right? Like maybe after the nav element on our footer, so like right here, let's create a new component. Now, what I would do is probably just create a new folder in the root of my project folder. So not even inside of app, just like in the actual root of my project, I'd say components. And then in that folder, I'd create a new file. Let's name it like counter.jsx. And then in that file, let's say like export default function uppercase counter because it's a React component. Let's return either a React fragment or a div or whatever you want. You could just have a button, but I'm probably going to want a div just so I can like position the button inside of it if I want to center it or style it or just adjust the layout. But let's just have a button, and let's have it say like you have clicked this X times. Let's give this a save, and then back in layout, let's use that down here, right? So just counter, and then up at the top of this file, we would import that. So import counter from, and then just go up out of the app folder, and then into the components folder, and then grab counter. Cool, so if we save that, cool, down here. Now, obviously, we haven't set up anything interactive, so nothing happens when you click it. But now we would just want this X to pull from a piece of state, right? That's keeping track, like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. So let's go back into counter. And up at the top, and we're going to run into an error, but it's really easy to fix it. So I want to show you what's going on here. By default, everything in Next, unless you tell it otherwise, is super old-fashioned traditional server-rendered HTML. It's not client-side JavaScript. Like there's zero client-side JavaScript right out of the gate. However, so for example, with that being said, if we say like import, you destructure the object use state from React, as soon as I save this, we're going to run into an error. And you could read this message if you want to, but I can just let you know that it's because by default in Next, everything is like server traditional rendered HTML. If you actually want like client-side JavaScript, up at the top here, you just say quotes, use client. That's it. You save it, we're in business. So the idea here is it's opt-in instead of opt-out. Like by default, it's good old-fashioned server-rendered HTML, almost like a PHP environment, right? It's just static HTML being sent to the client. And that's the default. You have to opt in to the client-side JavaScript world with this little tag up here at the top, quotes, use client. As soon as we have that, now we're back in what you would imagine like a normal React environment. So now we can actually use state. So in our function, we would say like const square brackets to destructure an array. Let's say like counter comma set counter equals use state. Let's put it to 0 by default, and then let's use that down here. So counter, and then let's add an on click for the button. So on click equals curly brackets. Just have an arrow function. If we stay on one line, we don't even need the curly brackets. And what we do is just call set counter, and then you're going to give it prev, arrow symbol, and then just prev plus 1. So just increment the value by 1. Whoops, looks like I've got an error here. It looks like I'm missing a closing curly brackets, like maybe right here. Yes, let's give that a save. Let's test it out. Perfect. So it's incrementing, beautiful. Now, the reason I spent the time to walk through that with you is not only to show you that, yes, you need to opt in to get the client-side JavaScript, but also this is the perfect demonstration that that state is persisting as you navigate from page to page to page. I mean, this is awesome, right? You've seen that without Next, it is not a trivial task to set up like a full, like URL routing and the back button for history and have that persist and have state that persists. I mean, this is really cool. Now it would be really easy to implement like a persistent chat room that keeps the client-side state even as you navigate from page to page to page. Now, yes, as soon as I manually refresh, watch, we're keeping the state 31 times, but as soon as I manually refresh, obviously it goes back down to 0 because that's just client-side memory. However, you can create some really cool interactive experiences now that you're sort of mixing client-side with server-side. At this point, let's change gears. So we've seen how you can set up, like hard-coded pages. Like we manually created a folder named about for this URL. We manually created a folder named contact for this URL. But how could you set up truly dynamic URLs ahead of time? Like what if you had a social media site and you wanted it to be like /post and then like a URL for a user-created post? Well, let me walk through that with you. It's actually a lot easier than you might think it is. So in the description for this video, you'll find this link to this example bit of JSON. It's just on my GitHub, but this URL gets you raw JSON, and it's an array. I think it has like 5 or 6 animals, and each one is either like a cat or a dog with a name, a species, a birth year, a description, a photo, so on and so forth. Well, one of them doesn't have a photo, so we can practice like a fallback if you don't have a photo, but let's practice fetching this data and then looping through it. And on our home page, let's have a list of the 5 or 6 pets from this dynamic data source. Now, before we jump into that, if we were not using Next.js and we were building an entirely 100% client-side JavaScript solution, you would probably fetch this data in your client-side JavaScript, right? For a lot of years, that was sort of the industry standard. If you're using client-side JavaScript, you perform the data fetching on the client side. However, in the modern world of React and frameworks like Next and Remix, it's really common to actually load this on the server side. So go ahead and grab this URL into your clipboard, copy the JSON URL into your clipboard, and let's do this. Let's go into our homepage JSX file. Let's close some of these out. So just in the app folder, not in the about or contact, but just in page.jsx, Let's have this, let's change this like heading level 3 and say like list of pets. List of pets. Okay, and then let's loop through something, right? So like we'll have an unordered list, and then we'll have a list item for each animal. So before we even get to that, up at the top here, check this out. Let's create a brand new function. Let's say it's an async function. Let's say like async function, and let's name it get all pets, or just like get pets. The idea is we're going to call this function inside of our component. But what's really cool is this is not a client component. Remember, we didn't say like, quotes, use client up at the top. We don't want that. This is a server component. So this is not client-side JavaScript. This is what's really cool. This is going to run on the server side. So this gets us all those benefits of avoiding the awkwardness of fetching data on the client side. This will run server side. So in this function, let's just say like const pets promise equals await, and then let's just call fetch, give it a URL, paste in your clipboard, and then let's say like const pets equals await pets promise, call JSON, and let's just return pets. Cool. The idea is, you can look at this URL. It's just an array with 6 objects in the array. Now, the idea is in our React component down here, before we return, we can just say const pets equals await, and then just call this function name. We called it get pets. And if you're going to use await, then this function would need to be async. So let's say like export default right here, right before the word function, just async. Cool. Now we have this collection. We can loop through it. It's that easy. So in the unordered list, I would just curly brackets, say pets.map. Each one is a singular, so pet, arrow symbol, curly brackets. You don't even need to have the curly brackets or drop down. It's just like my own personal preference. I don't, everyone's got their own syntax preferences, but then I would return just a list item. So li, hit tab. And then for React performance reasons, when you're looping through something, each one needs a unique key value. So instead of just the one parameter of pet, and you don't need parentheses if you have one parameter, I would actually replace that with parentheses so I can have 2 parameters. So pet, comma, index, and then I would give the opening li a key of just index. But in the list, let's output the pet's name. So if you look at the raw JSON, each object in the array has this property of name. So check it out. We'll just say in the li tag, just curly brackets, let's say pet.name. Let's give that a save. Go back to the browser. Awesome. There are the pets, the 6 pets from our raw JSON data source. Now, here's the interesting part. Remember, we were talking about how to create dynamic URLs. So we have these hard-coded, totally static URLs of about and contact. But now, what if we wanted each one of these to be a link? Like when you click on Meows a Lot, what if we wanted it to take you to like /animal or /pet /Meows a Lot, right? And that's coming from a dynamic endpoint or database, some sort of unpredictable source. How in the world could you set that up? Let me show you. And actually, before we actually create that URL structure, let's first just turn these into links that are pointing towards the expected URL. Let me show you what I mean. So back in page.jsx, instead of just the list item being text, we would want it to be an A element, or actually we want it to be a link element. So up at the very top of this file, let's import link. So import link from quotes next/link. And then down here, let's just wrap this. So like I'll cut it in my clipboard, say uppercase link component, paste that text back in. And then on the opening link, we would want href equals, and I would say curly brackets for something dynamic. And I'm going to have quotes like /pet/ and then I just want to add something onto that. And what it is I would just take the pet's name and convert it to lowercase, like for a URL's sake, right? So like lowercase Meows a Lot or lowercase Frank. So, you could use the pet's ID, but we're not actually working with a database, so this is good enough. Let's just say like plus pet.name.to lowercase. Save that, give it a try. So if I hover over that, perfectly. You can see down at the bottom of the screen, like if I click on this one, it takes us to /pet/baker. If I click on this one, it takes us to /pet/barks-a-lot. Beautiful. Now the question is, how do we actually create, how do we say what should live at this URL? This is where Next gets really powerful. And when you wrap your mind around what we're about to do, the sky is the limit. Like you're going to see the magic of Next.js. So all we do, we go into our folder structure. And I really like this about Next. We don't need to jump into a configuration file. It's all just like folder and file structure based. So in our app folder, just like how we have about and contact, we would create a folder named pet. And then inside the pet folder, we're going to create a new folder named square brackets, so opening and closing, and inside the square brackets, let's say name. Now this could be anything, pizza, unicorn. It's essentially like a URL parameter that I'm naming name. And the reason I'm going with that is that's what comes after /pet, right? So it's like a nested folder structure. So this is the pet part of the URL. We already have a folder named pet. And then the name is dynamic. So because it's like a parameter, it goes in square brackets. If instead we were looking them up by like their database ID, obviously we would have chose, square brackets ID instead of square brackets name. But check this out. Now inside that square brackets name folder, we're going to create a new file and name it page.jsx. Okay, in this file, you might have guessed, we're going to export default function, just whatever, just an uppercase function. This is a component. And then let's return, you could have like a React fragment or a div. Let's just say like heading level 2, pet name here, their birth year, maybe like birth year here, maybe like their photo. We'll fill this in once we actually have the data, right? But if you save that, and now you go back to the home and we click on like meows a lot. So there you see it, right? Pet name should go here, birth year here, cool. You can go back to the home page. So now the question is, like when we go to like barks a lot, how do we actually like fetch the relevant data for this particular pet in the database? Or, in our case, we're not looking at a database, we're just looking at a JSON file, but use your imagination that it was a database or whatever your data source is. So whether you're looking something up by ID or by name, it's just a URL parameter. So back in that file, when we're defining, our function for the component in these parentheses, let's destructure the incoming object, and we're interested in params. Now check this out. Down here, instead of like fake content for H2, we could say like curly brackets and then params.name. That's going to be available because that's what we named our folder, right? Like square brackets, that's the URL parameter, name. So if you go back, there you see barks a lot, or if you go to like woof, there you see woof. However, that isn't coming from any sort of JSON or database. That's just literally coming from this plain text, up here. So like literally if I change this to like blue, right, you see blue. So that's not real dynamic data. So the question is, if we go back to a real one like woof, we need to look for that. And this could be like a database ID number or string. We just need to actually go look that up now. So let's simulate like looking that up. Let me explain. So I would probably, like in the functional component right here, I would say like const pet, like singular pet equals await. And then this function doesn't exist yet, but we can go create it in 5 seconds from now, like get pet, and then pass it. Whoops, VS Code just did something that I did not want. Get pet, okay. And then just pass it params.name, like give it whatever URL structure. And then we do need to make this an async function. And now let's just go create a function outside of this, like way up here, async function with a name of get pet. Make sure you have it a parameter. You could call it X or name. And then let's just realistically probably query a database or, a REST endpoint somewhere, but we don't have that. We just have this fake JSON collection. So I would just get creative with this. So here's what I would do. I'd probably say like const all pets promise equals await fetch, paste it in that URL again, and then I'd say like const all pets equals await all pets promise, call JSON, and then I would just filter that, right? I'd probably say like const pet equals all pets filter. At the end of that square bracket 0, just get the only item in the new filtered array. And then before we fill that in, I would just return that singular pet. And then in the filter, I would just say, pass the current pet that's been looped to, and I would return true only if it's the one we're interested in. So like only if name.to, and I'm just going to convert it to uppercase for comparison's sake, like if uppercase, triple equal sign to check for equality, if pet.name.to uppercase. So in other words, if this name that's been passed into this function, if that equals the name in this array of all the pets, then that's a match, and that's the only pet object we want to return. Cool. So this had nothing to do with Next.js. This would probably actually just be a database call, but you get the idea. Then down here now we can use that, right? We have this variable named singular pet. So check this out. Now instead of params.name for this, you could say like pet.name, or let's display their birth year here. Curly brackets, pet.birth year. Let's give that a save. Awesome. So we see uppercase wolf, we see 2013. Let's add their description text, right? So each one has a paragraph of text. Let's say pet.description. Let's give that a save. Cool. So now you can go back to the home page. You can click on meows a lot. Cool. You can click on purrs loud. Awesome. Let's add their image really quick. So I'd probably say only if the object has a pet photo. Otherwise, I don't want an image element if there is no photo. So I'd say like if pet.photo and then just have an image element. Let's say source equals quotes or curly brackets pet.photo. You obviously would want to give it alt text, and just a quick note here, Next actually has its own image component for all sorts of performance and accessibility and pre-rendering. It's awesome, but in the real world, you would probably want to use Next's image component, but this will do the trick for now. Cool. So amazing. So that was just a really quick example of, and we still have our interactive component down in the footer. You can go back to the homepage. It's saving your state. All of this is client-side navigation, but more importantly, the server side is performing the data fetching, right? Like the server side, as it should be, it can query the database, can query API endpoints that only you should have permission and not like the visitors of your site should not have permission. So this is really the best of both worlds. This is the way that ideally I think you would want it. This is just a really good developer experience. And we're creating dynamic URLs. I mean, this is close to perfection for the current year that we're in. At this point, you might be wondering, how do I add a bit of styling? Like, how do I add a style sheet? Now, that's actually a bit opinionated. If you go to the React document, or excuse me, not React, Next documentation, you click on styling, there's like 4 main different strategies. There's CSS modules, there's Tailwind, there's Sass, there's CSS and JavaScript. I'd probably just show you the most basic, which is just to add a global style sheet. And as Next says, and I agree, this is like the most simple approach for those who are already familiar with traditional CSS. But for larger, more complex sites, it does, you're going to have to use BEM or some sort of organization because it can get out of control really quickly. But for a lot of sites, I think traditional CSS is indeed the way to go. So really quickly, let me show you how you would set that up. I would probably just go into our layout.jsx file, right? Because that's being used for all of our pages. And before we import something, let's create a CSS file. So like up here at the top in app, I'd probably just create a new file and name it like global.css. For now, let's just say like body, font family, sans, serif, and like background color, like a really light gray. I don't know. Let's give that a save. Back in layout, up at the top here, you would just say like import. And then when it's something simple like a CSS file instead of like a component or a function, you don't need to say like import a name from. It's literally just import and then the file path. So import quotes / for the same folder you're already in. We named it global.css. Go ahead and hit save. Back in the browser. Awesome. You can see it's using sans serif and that background color is being applied. Beautiful. And that's actually where this lesson is going to come to a close. And that's actually where the scope of talking about Next.js in this course is going to close. Remember, again, this is a course about React itself, not a course about Next. There's a whole world of resources and tutorials and courses about Next.js. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to sink your teeth into. But hopefully this lesson gave you a sneak peek of like what the point of it is or why there's so much hype or why so many people are excited about Next.js. And as we saw in this lesson, it's not super scary to get started. It's not that intimidating to get started. And in a lot of ways, it makes React less intimidating or less scary. We didn't need to configure Webpack or Vite. We didn't need to load any JavaScript files. We didn't need to set up React Router. So many things just felt easier and more intuitive for us. And we have server-side rendering, and we have client-side state. I mean, this is just a great developer experience. The sky is the limit from here. If you want to learn more about Next.js, there's a whole big, wild world of the internet for you to learn more about Next. Anyways, I hope you feel like you learned something in this lesson. And until next time, take care. Hey, thanks for watching all the way until the end. Just another reminder, the video you just watched is part of my full 16 or 17 hour premium React course. You can find a link in the description to this video to my website, learnwebcode.com. In the React course, we learn how to build single-page applications without Next, so you're really going to level up just your raw React skills. When you join the premium React course, it's part of a bundle, so you're also going to get my Web Developer Bootcamp course, my Laravel course, my MySQL course, the React course, as well as access to the exclusive Discord chat server. Thank you so much for watching this video. See you in the next one very soon.